Hello, welcome to another tutorial video. Just before I get into the meat of this one, I'd like to point out a couple of things on the channel page. First of all, I've set up a Facebook page so you can share this quite easily with your friends if you think something's of use. Secondly, I've actually set up a Twitter account so you can ask me things publicly rather than through messages. That makes it a lot easier for me, A, to reply to you, and B, it's always there for people to actually look back over questions asked and answers rather than them being private ones. And also, most importantly, I've actually put a list of all the WCS tutorials that I've done. So if you click on that, you'll actually see a list of everything. I've split it into literature, poetry and language, and I'm going to be adding to them daily. Currently I do a lot of my focus on AQA, but I'm going to start doing a lot more OCR stuff. If there's anything else that you want to see added, etc., then just get in touch in any of those modes of communication and I will see what I can do. On to today's session then, we're going to be looking at section 4 and we're going to be looking at the major quotes from George and Lennie. So basically, first off about George, I'm going to do them both because George is actually very short in this one. First off about George, Crook says to him, well, George can tell you any screwy thing and it doesn't matter, it's just the talking, it's just being with another guy, that's all. And he's telling us something about George that obviously he's picked up straight away, even though he doesn't spend much time with them. Now, other people looked at this and they just kind of think, well, it's a bit funny you two hanging around together. I wonder why they hang around together. But here, Crooks, obviously, who's shown to us as intelligent because obviously he reads, etc. And obviously he's the loneliest person, loneliest man at least on the ranch. He actually sees this straight away that George just wants to be with another guy and explains to us a lot of the kind of compassion and the friendship that George has with Lennie. It's really important to him just being with someone, even if he knows himself that Lennie doesn't always understand everything he says. It's also important that when things start to go wrong and Curly's wife is kind of putting the cat amongst the pigeons, Lennie says, I wish George was here, I wish George was here. And obviously the fact that he repeats it stresses how important this is to him, and also it shows that George is kind of his safe space, the one who fixes things, the one who makes everything okay. And then obviously when George actually comes back, we know that when he's not around, things aren't going to be good. So he comes back to this instance, he seems like I can't go away for a minute. So he knows there that his presence is needed for things to kind of go along smoothly. And obviously a little later on, this sets us up for the idea that when Lennie isn't alone in the barn with Curly's wife, then obviously something bad is going to happen, and obviously that's being alluded to here. So moving on then to Lennie. Lennie, first of all, he smiles helplessly in an attempt to make friends with Crooks. You know, it shows he has no awareness of kind of the social constructs, etc., of the black man and how the black man is treated differently, etc., etc. And that's important because it shows a contrast with Candy. When Candy comes into the room, he references twice that he's embarrassed to be there, and it's not necessarily because Candy's a horrible person or feels like it's beneath him to go there. It's just not the done thing for the white man to share a space with a Negro at this time. Crook scowled, but Lennie's disarming smile defeated him. That's really important because again it just shows like a childlike innocence, and obviously Crook scowling. Lennie can't read how people are acting towards him. So obviously just before this, when Curly has come into the room and just before the handbraking incident, and he's not really read the situation, here's another example of it. But obviously in the previous chapter, obviously it worked out badly, but in this one it worked out to a point quite well. And then it shows how much he kind of needs and actually believes in George when he knows that George wouldn't leave him. He says George would do nothing like that, which tells us obviously something about George as well, but it tells us moreover about his his need for George and how highly he respects him. And obviously when Crook says something about who hurt George, is suddenly obviously gives us like a really quick pace of this. Lennie's eyes centered and grew quiet and mad, and basically so all of this is, you know, kind of showing like a bubbling rage inside him, and he stood up and walked dangerously towards Crooks. Who hurt George? So again we've got this kind of power coming through from Lennie, and also this snap decision, you know, that he can switch, excuse the term, in an instance. And obviously again this is important later on because as soon as he's scared when Curly's wife starts to make noise, he obviously does something he doesn't intend to do. Again, we have his animalistic quality and the fact that he growls back, and then he actually talks about the He talks about his version of the dream again. He says we're going to have rabbits and a berry patch. Again, it's very simple to him, with the kind of, the intimacy of something really soft, and obviously that's what the rabbits present to him. And Crooks frames it with you're nuts. Not only nuts because he obviously it's to be taken in two ways. Not only because is he crazy in the fact that he is obviously mentally retarded in some way, but moreover in the fact that he believes he's going to have this dream and therefore he's nuts. When Curly's wife comes in, it's really important that they all swung their heads towards the door. So first of all, the idea of the word swung there kind of shows like a complete change, and obviously so they know they might have to have a complete change in their conversation as well. But moreover, it shows us that they're swung in terms of the balance that they have within the novella at the time. They're in one place and it's all going well, and it's not just their heads that have swung, but they're kind of their minds, their mindsets, their futures have swung at the same point. And again, even though it doesn't swing, it's not only Crooks is swung at that point immediately. It's really important because obviously Curly's wife puts him in his place, quote unquote, and they're swung in terms of from that point on everything just gets worse for all three of them. Obviously Crooks first, and then Candy, and then Lennie. And again, when she's there, we just see the kind of attraction that he has to her. He watched her, his mouth half open. Again, it could be taken in two ways. First of all, and he's just kind of like open mouth drooling, but second of all, it's just kind of like maybe Lennie's of the kind of capacity where he needs to concentrate in doing everything and hold himself together, and then when he sees her, that kind of overrides something in him, so he ends up a mouth breather with his mouth half open. You got no rights coming in a coloured man's room. Again, this just kind of shows, should be earlier actually, sorry, when this he says this earlier, excuse me, I think he says, sorry, I think that's actually a Crooks quote, I'm just going to delete that, but he does say something similar to Lennie anyway, and the point being that again, Lennie doesn't actually know the social kind of boundaries that people should have with one another at the time. And again, the reference I just mentioned earlier from Crooks, this just shows, and he says, I wish George was here, I wish George was here. It's really important because again, it shows how much he relies on George and needs George, and obviously he needs George to make sense of things.